All right. So to start off with, we're going to go over just brief history. The term barndominium is actually relatively new. So it really only came about in about 1989. It was in the New York Times, and it was by a guy named Carl Nielsen, who was a developer in Connecticut. So what he wanted to do was create a subdivision, and instead of being around like a golf community, it was going to be based around horses. So my first experience with barndominiums was in 2015. Didn't know that it was a barndominium at that point in time. What we were just doing is building out a garage inside a pole barn and trying to create temporary housing for people. So we had a client in Sumter County who wanted to go ahead and basically create a smaller house attached to his garage before he built his much larger house on that same property. This was off of more of a timber style pole barn. So if any of you know anything about pole barns or kind of Amish barns, we basically built out a housing section inside of that for him. Right around that same time, actually in 2016, is when America's favorite couple, Chip and Joanna Gaines from HGTV, went ahead and released a episode where they took a actual barn and converted it into a house. So that particular barndominium became very popular. A lot of people heard about it. There's a lot of actual litigation around it as well. The reason there was some litigation around that was because they started renting it out as kind of temporary Airbnb. That wasn't allowable for that zoning at that time. So that became very popular. A lot of people heard about it, especially connected to the show, and there being lawsuits with it. Everyone started really paying attention to, okay, hey, this is a barndominium. We're going to start talking about these. So from 2016 on, we see them kind of explode in Texas. So they're all over Texas, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, most of those kind of western states there. Really don't see anything happening in Florida for a while. At this same point in time, we've got a drafting company, so we have people that are kind of coming from all over the place, coming to us, asking us for plans. I would say from 2016 until 2021, we probably did about 50 barndominium plans just for one-off customers, but they all had a common problem. So all of those customers were typically owner-builders. So for those of you who don't know what an owner-builder is, that's a homeowner who decides they're going to try to build their own house. It's always a great idea there. Definitely recommend against that. But they all had a similar problem. Nobody knew who to put these buildings up. So they would reach out to these big commercial companies. Commercial companies didn't want to touch them if they were under 6,000 square foot because it just didn't make economic sense for big metal erection building companies to come do one-off 2,000 square foot houses in the middle of Gilchrist County or Clay County, anywhere like that. So we actually did our first one in Hernando County in 2021. This was our first plan. We did not do the construction. This was just the actual plan for Hernando. Went through permitting fairly easy. And our customers did have a background in actual metal building erection, so they had those contacts to actually put them up. So that plant actually just finished construction just recently. But seeing that we had an issue there, we actually kind of found the gap and said, okay, well, if everyone's having these same issues and nobody can put these buildings up, let's just open a company that specializes just in that. We're going to fill that market, and we're not going to touch conventional homes at all. We want to go ahead and just focus on the barndominiums. So moving on, kind of talking about what a barndominium actually is. So you kind of heard me talk about metal buildings. Basically, a barndominium can take a whole bunch of different shapes and sizes, different construction types. But what it basically boils down to is we've got some type of shell building, some big structure that we're going to build out a house inside of. Okay, a lot of times you're going to see these in conjunction with large man caves, garages. Occasionally we do go to the barn side and you'll start seeing some livestock and stuff like that as well, tractor storage. But there's pretty much 4 different types of barndos. We've got red iron, so red iron steel. That's all our company deals with, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. You have tube steel, which is a little bit more economical metal to use. But they're primarily used for like carports, garages, stuff that's normally a little bit less likely to have some type of human loss of life category. You also have the timber pole barns. So that's going to be like your Amish barns. That's where you set the actual telephone poles into the ground, build a wood roof on top of it. We still see those a lot in bigger agricultural properties. And then we also have what's coming up more in the Texas area right now is more of a hybrid model. So people are using the metal post and the metal roof, but they're actually building out frame walls in between. That's going to be your most common type in Texas, Colorado, Arizona, all those states. It gives them a little bit more flexibility on the wall styles, but down here, if you're gonna plan on doing that, you might as well just build a frame house, okay? We've got a lot of weather and climate issues down here that kind of are, not conducive to that. So, let's see what we actually had coming next. So the benefits versus conventional homes. First is gonna be cost. So our cost is substantially lower than a conventional home, a conventional custom home, let me say. A lot of your track homes, a lot of model homes, stuff like that, they can obviously work down prices on that. But if you're going to do a custom home and we're doing it at a block, you're probably around the 200, 190 square foot price point. Your typical Barndominium is going to be between $130 and $160 a square foot. And that is mostly due to labor savings. So leads us into our second point, which is going to be speed. With a conventional home, well, with all homes, you're pouring a slab, right? So pretty much every home is level up until that point. When you start doing block homes, you've got a mason who's coming out. That's your block trade. You've got a truss company that's going to have to go ahead and manufacture the trusses. You got a framer that's going to set the trusses. You got a roofer that's going to go ahead and put the roof on. And you've got a window and door installer that's going to go ahead and put your windows and doors in. All that, just between those 5 trades, assuming they all take 1 week to do, we're still at 5 weeks, right? In Barndominiums, we get that done in 12 days. So it's one company that comes out and sets the entire thing. So they put a crew on, and within a week and a half, they're done. The durability on them is something I can't stress enough to people. All of our metal has a 25-year warranty on it. That's for the color. They have a longer structural warranty on the actual metal itself. But what a lot of people in Florida don't realize is that in Florida, we really just go ahead and create a scratch coat out of stucco. So in a lot of the northern states, they actually use stucco as a vapor barrier. That's your weather barrier. In Florida, we're relying on the paint. Okay, so your 6 mil latex paint that's going on a house is really what your vapor barrier is for the entire home. So with that Florida sun, when you start baking your paint and it starts getting all chalky, you've already lost your weather resistance. So your block is soaking in some type of moisture. Obviously that doesn't happen with metal. Okay, so being that we have a 25-year warranty on it, you don't have to worry about any color, any paint, any maintenance on that for at least 25 years. There is some maintenance associated with it. So metal expands and contracts, which is obvious, right? When we screw PBR panels, which is the basic roof panel in, over time, the screw holes are going to elongate. So you should go ahead and get these serviced probably every 7 to 10 years, just re-screwed. You can opt at the beginning to go ahead and go with like a standing seam roof. And at that point in time, you really kind of eliminate that need. But if you're going to go cheaper on the front end, you're going to have a little bit of repair costs on the back end. So I want to hop into the design flexibility. That's the biggest draw to most of these. So because we have this big shell that's already going to go ahead and hold its own, we don't have to worry about any interior bearing walls or anything like that. We're really flexible, up to 175 foot wide by infinite length, no bearing walls inside. Okay, we can design these however you guys want to go ahead and design them, get whatever exact floor plan that you're actually looking for. So went ahead and we've got some photos here. This is a photo of a project that was completed up in, this is the Ocala area. So this is actually the garage. So it's an insulated garage. They're using it as a second living room and dining room. It's kind of a man cave space separate from the rest of the house, but just goes to show you kind of how flexible these are once they get insulated. Kind of move through these a little bit faster. This is another one in Ocala. It's actually less than half a mile away from the last one. This was being designed as a mother-in-law suite to a main home. This is the kitchen of that exact one that we looked at. And then from here, the rest of these are not photos that I took. These are, I'm sorry.
The one that you saw, I saw you have actually a second story in it. So you're putting extra,
Yep.
it's a loft, is
Yep.
that extra metal inside there then? Same concept?
So we've got two different options. We can go with an actual metal floor, or we can go with some type of floor truss. Yep. And we'll get a little bit on that too with some photos we got coming up here. So previous to this, all these photos were photos that we actually took. These photos that are coming up now are more design stuff that is readily available online. Just kind of go ahead and show you some of the flexibility here. So what you'll see a lot in these spaces, and kind of the only drawback, is that because we've got these big vaulted ceilings and we're not using some type of truss system, the ceiling is actually mounted directly to the bottom of the metal. Okay, we still end up with about an R38 insulation in the ceiling, which is about the same as what a conventional home is going to be. But in most cases, unless you're splitting your AC, you're going to have some type of spiral duct exposed, or we're going to have to build out some type of soffit. The only other workaround around this that we've been doing for the people that we've worked with so far is that we split into two smaller AC systems. One services one half of the house, one services the other half. And for the main common areas that we have here, we go ahead and do side registers and kind of filter out that way. Let's see what we have. Most of these are design type stuff that's going to be coming up. We really see that people kind of fall into two different categories. So like this one's going to be more of your farm type style. And really what we'll see is we'll see people wanting to go heavily farm or very modern industrial, right? So again, a lot of the whites, a lot of the woods, that type of stuff involved in here. All right. Just kind of speeding through this so we can go ahead and get some questions at the end, but thank God we don't have anybody asking for this type of stuff yet, but this is going to be more of your industrial chic, lots of metals, lots of grays, that type of stuff. So this one is actually being built in Arizona currently. This is one that's got a full second floor that does open up to a loft for the main living area. We're going to see that as a really common theme through a lot of these because the cost for us to go up is substantially lower than in a conventional home. So the difference in cost between a 12-foot bearing height and a 24-foot bearing height in barns is not really substantial at all. You're probably talking about a 25 to 30% increase in the metal cost. The downside to these, which depending on how you look at it, is that we do have to make the outsides a little bit more plain. To make these really cost effective and affordable, we're looking to go ahead and square off as much as we can so we don't have to have so many steel posts. Most of the porches and stuff that you see on Barndominiums are going to be add-on hand frame, some type of attachment to the actual building itself. So the biggest kind of hurdle that we see with people that are reaching out to us right now is nobody understands the process. This is the process not just for barndominiums, but pretty much any home in general. Find your land first. Reach out to your realtors, find land. That's the biggest thing for us. The land has so much to do with, are we allowed to put metal buildings out there? Are we in a flood zone? There's a lot of items that we need to kind of plan ahead for before we can really design a house properly. So find land, get your pre-approval, know how much that we're actually allowed to spend. We always say design the dream, scale for budget. Let's put it all out there, exactly what you want, and then when you figure out how much it costs, decide what's not necessarily the most important to you. From that point, we start the design process. Pretty much from the beginning of the design process until the keys in hand, we are shooting for a 9 to 10 month time frame. Okay, about 6 months on the actual construction side, honestly, we're probably about 6 weeks on actual plans, and then we try to give ourselves at least a month in permitting. And from there, once we get the design, we go ahead and pick your selections, get your contract made, and go ahead and start constructing. So this part, we could probably skip through a lot of this too. This is going to be more on why choose our company. Our company's obviously been in the community for a while. I think we've got a pretty good rapport with most people. We've got a huge issue in Florida in general with unlicensed contracting. Okay, contractors have gotten such a bad rap. in Florida because of guys that do this kind of stuff and go ahead and kind of come out and take people's money, and they're using one job to pay for the next. The whole reason that we started this company was transparency. We're trying to fill a void. We're trying to go ahead and fix a problem that we see, but we need to be completely transparent about it. That's why we videotape everything. I think our next slide here is that we're not hiding, right? So everything we do is posted online, even our mistakes, right? So we have to own up to all that. Transparency is key. Let's see what we got here. Obviously, the experience aspect goes with that. The guys designing the plans can answer the questions that the people are building plans do, right? That brings us to question and answer. So we do have some gifts here to go ahead and give out for anybody who wants to ask a question, but I'll go ahead and start taking any questions.
I'm not asking because I want to give.
Okay.
Because I want to know.
Yeah.
I've looked at like the Hugo designs out of northern Michigan, which are all like a prefab metal.
Yep.
I have a design picked out of Texas if I ever win the lottery or my wealthy uncle dies. Do we have the resources here, and are we doing a lot in SIP panel construction yet?
Okay.
Do we, where you have the foam sandwich metal?
Yeah, so SIP panel is definitely a form of construction that's all over Florida already.
Okay.
Nothing that we do particularly, but we're very versed in that. We've done plans on that before as well. It's a good system if you're exact on what you want. So if you never want to make modifications to it, then SIP is the way to go.
Yeah, you better know where your lights are going and everything.
Right. If you're trying to add on to it, if we're trying to go ahead and add windows in places, or we need to make any changes, SIP panels are kind of difficult to work around at that point. So just something to kind of think about there. But
I
thank
feel
you.
like from the R factor and the longevity, right?
So,
Does that-
nice bottle of wine for you there.
Thank you.
Now, what
But
everybody's hands up.
to go ahead and
Fastest land animal, really.
yeah, the better insulation value on the wall side, and that's because our walls are actually 12 inches thick. Okay, so what we're doing on these barndominiums is we're building out your 8-inch steel, and then we're actually putting a whole extra frame wall to the interior of that, so that we have a place to mount all of our electric. We have
What's
a place.
going in between those? Is that foam or?
So you've got the option to do spray foam, or we got the option to go ahead and do bats. So they actually make a bat system specifically for this. It allows some type of vapor transmission on the outside, so you never get that condensation. The spray foam, our only concern with is that if you spray it directly to the metal, we don't want oil canning on the metal. So we're going to want to go ahead and put some type of barrier in between those two. Good.
Since we're talking about so much metal,
Uh-huh.
what's the liability with lightning?
So all these houses have to be grounded the same way that any other house is. We actually go ahead and do a dual UFR bond to the actual house, which, not to get too deep in the weeds, but it's where you actually take rods and you bury them into the ground about 10 foot. So we do have transmission into that. The thing about barndominiums in general, though, especially the way that we do them, is that you're basically getting the metal shell, and then we're building out a frame structure to the interior of it. So you've always got that frame separation, kind of an air gap between the metal and the actual interior of the home. So you're never going to have any of that transmission
There's
in
not like a
between.
risk of you leaning up against the wall and you get that.
Exactly.
And then,
Yeah.
is there any benefit homeowners insurance-wise?
So homeowners insurance lending have been two of the main issues that we've been kind of pushing back towards. We do have a ton of people that are insuring this pretty much the same as conventional homes right now. There are some companies that are hesitant to it though. So especially on the lending side, there's not a whole lot of comps to go against right now. It's something that we're trying to go ahead and really push the education out to everybody, kind of explain that although this is a new style of construction, it's still just a home. Okay, we're not recreating the wheel here. This is still just another style of house. The same way that you have craftsman style homes or you have, Victorian homes. This is a barndominium type. So we have plenty of insurance agents though that go ahead and basically consider the same as any type of conventional home. All right, let me grab you and give you a red. Yeah. Next question, go ahead. I'll pass that down.
I was gonna say she has 2 questions.
My son and I have been studying container homes.
Uh-huh.
I know they're beautiful in a lot of different places. And I think they're starting some in Tampa. Are you looking to maybe do that in the future too?
So we've done plans for container homes in the past. The closest one to us is actually in Mazarktown. Hernando County in many areas has a requirement that you can't have container exteriors, so we have to wrap them in some type of hardy board or something like that. But yeah, we've done the plans for them. I have no intention of hopping into that on the construction side. Oh, great question there, though. We'll catch you up with that. Anybody else? Yeah, Amy?
It's gonna start being like subdivisions of these now, you know?
Yeah, so if you look out into Arizona, there's subdivisions of them everywhere. That's a very common construction type out there right now. And again, a lot of those are the hybrid models, right? So kind of the downside to doing just the straight up metal building is that we're going to have some type of metal siding, metal exterior. We can add the stone, we can go ahead and do stucco if you want to do that, but in order for us to do that, we have to flip our panels around backwards and basically go ahead and attach some type of ephes or substrate to it. What the hybrid models are doing is basically building out a frame house in between the metal post. So they can do board and batten, they can do, everything gets zip sheeted and weatherproof the same way that a regular frame house would. So we absolutely see subdivisions on that though.
Do you think you guys are gonna do like tiny homes too? Like she was talking about container, is that different than tiny? Is that different than tiny home though? Like, would you guys do that too?
So on the cost side, once you start getting under about 2,000 square foot, these aren't necessarily the best option for you. Okay. It seemed like 2,000 square foot is kind of that sweet spot between whether you should be going with a conventional build or whether you should be going with steel. When we start getting steel onto these smaller size parcels, just the cost of shipping them out, the cost of having the same type of uprates, you end up running about the 180, 190 a square foot range anyway. So these are really more designed for any starting home that's going to be 2,000, 2,100 and above.
And current county ordinance only allows 900 square feet as the smallest. But you'd have to file a variance, but we're working on redoing that ordinance to allow smaller homes.
I thought they were looking at an area of homes over in Brooksville.
There is a variance requested now
Okay, that's what I thought I
for
heard.
18 sites.
Okay.
18 homes.
Perfect. Good.
Do you have your own crews that do all the construction, or do you sub out to different?
So a lot of what we have is sub-based. The erection is done from the same company that does the actual manufacturing. So all of our metal is manufactured in Georgia by a company called Hornet. They actually have their own installers for the erection process. So, but pretty much all of our trades, because we span a wider area, we pull subs from local areas and let them go ahead and do the work there. Yeah, well, great question though. And I think
I have one more question. So,
yeah.
that might be still any way of answering,
Yeah.
I don't know. But do you put a slab,
Yeah.
an actual like slab down? Like, is it like a foundation that has actually, it's not like a.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, like it has a foundation.
No, it's a ton of concrete. Yeah. So when you do these, if you guys have ever been in any type of, pretty much any type of warehouse, any type of commercial building.
Well, the Florida Cracker, the bourbon,
Yep.
would be a,
Yep. So
without walls, right?
Exactly.
Same
So
without
pretty much any type of warehouse space or anything like that you've been inside of, it's the same concept. We always take metal buildings, we're building out offices inside of them, right? We've been doing that for 40 years. It's the exact same thing moved into more of a smaller scale residential type thing. Great question though. Good.
What about like out on the beach where people have stilts?
There you go.
Do I get a hat?
Yeah.
I don't care about the wall.
I think we're actually all out of giveaways too. So that's a great question. Is it possible? Yes. Should we probably do it right now? Probably not.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. So what a lot of people do with those, we actually had a photo of one of them in there. It was the second photo that I showed on that kind of slideshow there. That bottom half was all garage. So that was completely open. The living space was actually upstairs. So you can still do that same type of thing out there, but being that it's all steel panels, you're gonna have to epoxy coat everything. It's kind of a nightmare to do any of that. Probably not doing that.
So when you said restrictions of Hernando County,
Yep.
like what is, like, I know like I prefer to be along the Brooksville Ridge, if you will.
Uh-huh.
Right? So you're talking Snow Memorial Highway, I'm in the country club now, and then back down towards
Yeah.
State City, whatever. Is that what you're kind of, is there like land restrictions where, okay, you got sinkholes, these things are gonna be more prone?
No, that's not what we're talking about there. What we're talking about mainly is zoning. So like, somebody has an infill lot in Spring Hill. I'm not dropping a metal building next to 2 conventional homes. Zoning's never gonna go for that, right? So any type of agricultural land, any type of R1A, R1C, any type of zoning that allows mobile homes, all that kind of stuff is gonna be allowable for barndominiums. Hernando County's been great about it. Pasco County's warming up to it. Hillsborough County, we got some work to do. But that's how all construction goes everywhere.
All right, keep your eyes open for that land then.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Perfect. Anything else? I know we're getting right about the time. Oh, go ahead. Best class ever, yeah.
So I wanted to ask about the hurricane and all the structure. I know it has to meet those guidelines like modular manufacture,
Yeah.
but still, what
So that goes into the durability side as well. Anything like it's built in Florida has to meet the wind code for the area that it's in. Okay, so whether we build this out of styrofoam, ICF, if we're going to go ahead and do concrete block, frame, it all has to meet the wind code for the area that it's actually being built in. So it gets specifically designed. That's kind of where your value engineering comes in, is trying to determine how much metal we have to throw at something to make sure that it's going to stay up. The benefit to these in kind of hurricane-prone areas like we're in, say you've got some type of tree branch that comes down and crushes a part of the house, okay, and falls on the house. In a traditional conventional home, that's going to require a significant amount of work to kind of correct, right? So we're going to have some type of truss work. We might have some type of block repair. That's not fast stuff. On our end, if any of the outside sheeting gets damaged, it's a one-day fix. We basically unscrew the panels, screw new panels on, and because we have as much of a gap to the interior walls as we do, it's not a substantial deal to actually go ahead and repair. It's going to be a relatively cheap fix. So, anything else?
Now,
Perfect.
last question, sorry. Will you build in a different state, or are you going to stay in Florida?
We are going to focus our efforts in Florida right now, and really right now, all we're focusing our efforts in is Citrus, Sumter, Hernando, Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough. That is where I want to be building at. We'll put plans out for anywhere. So last year, Homes Drafting Services did plans for 12 different states. I think we had 41 or 42 different counties in Florida that we did plans for. So wherever they come from, we'll do the plan for it. Surprisingly, Florida is one of the hardest places to actually do plans for. In most other states, you can kind of get by with a napkin drawing and just promising you're not going to hurt your neighbor's house. So, all right.
Well, thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.